Hi, Lucas from Taylor Wessing. Good to see you joining. We're going to just wait a couple minutes to let other people join in, and then we'll start a video, and then we'll start the presentation. So while we're waiting, I'd love to hear kind of where you're coming from and what you're hoping to get out of the session, and we'll try to make it as interactive as possible as we're speaking. So hi, Christina. Hi, Danielle. Tell us where you guys are coming in from, what part of Denver, or if you're outside of Denver, where you're coming in from. I'm calling in from Fort Collins, Colorado today. And that's my partner, Phil, that you also see on there, who
Hello, everyone.
is upstairs from Fort Collins, Colorado, too. We're a husband-wife business. So just throw in the chat where you guys are coming in from. And we are going to get started in what, about, I think, 1 minute, 2 minutes, Sarah? Hey, Danielle.
1 minute, we'll start the video.
Okay. Hey, Danielle and Christina, what part of Denver? So I grew up in the Denver area. Oh, I love that area over University Hills. It's nice. I grew up in Littleton and then moved away to the East Coast for about 10 years and then came back. Where's Governor's Park, Danielle? I know the name, but I don't remember exactly where, like intersection wise. And we moved to Fort Collins 6 years ago. Absolutely love it up here.
Yep.
Oh, 6th and Broadway. Okay.
Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Tammy Dorr, President and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership and co-chair of Denver Startup Week. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. DSW has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade. And this week, we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible, our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, our designer track sponsor, Battery 621, and the Public Works, people track sponsor, Exactly, and spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement to the week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage, Path, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors, all listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget, use the hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experiences and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
Hello, I'm Sal Gentili, CEO of Friday Health Plans, and we're proud to sponsor the growth track this year at Denver Startup Week. We're a company that just entered a rapid growth phase, so we felt it was particularly appropriate. When my business partner and I started Friday Health Plans 5 years ago, we knew we wanted to create a company that catered to people who bought their own health insurance. The Affordable Care Act was just getting going, and we saw an opportunity to serve a brand new market of health insurance consumers. Independent consultants, startup groups, gig workers, service industry, and other independent professionals, like many of you here today. We knew that if we built a health plan that was simple to buy, easy to use, had great customer service, and most of all was affordable, we could compete against the big insurance plans who only focus on serving big companies. After spending 5 years getting into the Colorado market and completing a successful proof of concept, we successfully closed a $50 million round of growth funding earlier this year. We're now about to expand to 3 additional states later this year, hire more than 400 employees to support our growth, and eventually be in more than 10 states by 2025. I wish each of you good luck in your startup and growth pursuits. And as you think about your upcoming health insurance needs, I hope you consider fellow growing startup Friday Health Plans. Open enrollment starts November 1st. Check us out at fridayhealthplans.com.
Hello everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Jake Cohen, the Growth Track Chair and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow. Regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, or sexual orientation. A special thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep Denver Startup Week free and accessible for all. Thank you for joining us and have a great week.
Okay, I think we're ready to get going. So thanks everybody for attending. I'm Candace Edelin, and you see my partner Phil Donaldson also. We're a 2-person company in Fort Collins and really excited to come talk with you today about how to use LinkedIn. So let me pull up my slides here, and then I won't have chat open because it's hard to see that and see the slides, and you'll understand in a second. But what I would like to do is Phil is going to be here with me, and he will be monitoring questions that you're asking. I like to have a lot of interaction as I speak. So I would love it if you pose questions as we go, rather than waiting until the end. I'm going to take little breaks throughout this talk to address your questions up front. So Phil will be kind of coalescing all of those questions. It does make it a little easier if we keep it all in one place. So if you want to put the questions in the Q&A and then any other comments or feedback that you have in chat, that allows Phil to make sure that he can kind of keep track of the questions and make sure that we've addressed your questions. So, but welcome. I am thrilled to have you guys here. I've been really excited to get a chance to speak at Denver Startup Week. It's a big honor. So we are going to talk today about how to go about supercharging your prospecting using LinkedIn. So I do have one question for you to throw into chat, and that's to tell me a little bit about the kinds of companies you're targeting. So I'll take a look at that as we go, and I will try to address kind of what types of companies you're going after. I've got examples from my own business, and I will tell you that this works best for business to business, or if you're targeting professionals that are on LinkedIn. But there's a lot of different ways that we can operate this. So great. Okay, so communication service providers. We've got US companies from pre-seed to Series A, professionals looking to level up your careers, corporations with corporate philanthropy and social impact programs. That's really cool. All right. So keep those companies developing new materials, tech companies at the B+ series. So one of the things that I'm hearing from a lot of you in the chat is that you've got a pretty broad target market, and I'm going to encourage you, for the purpose of LinkedIn, to narrow down your niche. So we'll talk about that, but this is very helpful. Okay, JD Edwards users, business intelligence decision makers, InsurTech. Cool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and keep going on this. Like I said before, if you have any questions, pose them. Phil's going to be monitoring the Q&A, and we'll bring up those questions as we go. So a little bit about me and my background. and why I developed this course in the first place. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Propel Growth is actually the 5th business that I started. But just before it, in 2000 and then in 2005, I co-founded a couple of businesses that were targeting the financial services industry and specifically electronic trading, so Wall Street trading. And during that time, I had the fortune of being partnered with a person who was regarded as one of the most technically savvy people on Wall Street. And so we were building some pretty leading edge stuff, not because of my brains. I was the commercial side of the business. But because of that, I was able to develop kind of a thought leadership on in that industry. I had a pretty big network in it over the course of time that we developed these 2 companies. And so when I started Propel Growth in 2007, I was able to leverage referrals from that industry and thought leadership that I was publishing on trade publications to bring in all of my business. And I literally did not make a sales call for almost 10 years. But then in 2018, we made the decision, Phil and I, that we wanted to pivot away from that industry. We were taking a look at commercial real estate technology, and that seemed like a good place to target for our new niche. But I didn't have any existing network in that space, and I didn't have a lot of money to travel. This is not, Fort Collins doesn't exactly have a massive number of commercial real estate technology companies. So we couldn't spend a ton of money to travel and go to a lot of events. We went to some, but it wasn't like I had this endless budget for that. And I'm really kind of opposed to buying cold lists, for example, and then just spamming the list. I don't think it works very well anyway. And I hate cold calling. But if I don't sell, then we don't eat. And so I had to do something. And so both Phil and I were kind of experimenting and looking around for methodologies, and we landed on some LinkedIn methodologies that looked pretty promising. So I started experimenting with those methodologies and researching kind of what the best practices were for generating leads on LinkedIn. Talked to a number of the firms that do outsourcing, looked into bots and trialed those, and kind of packaged up what I thought looked like the best practices according to what all these other companies were publishing on how to go about LinkedIn lead generation. What I found after I got started doing this was that the best practices don't work very well. And so I started to kind of shift my approach to something that was a lot more personalized, a lot more one-to-one communication on LinkedIn, and that started working. So over the first 6 months of my efforts on LinkedIn, investing roughly 5 to 8 hours a week. So I wasn't doing this all the time because I still had a business to work on. I was able to get 500 new connections in my target audience. 355 of them actually engaged with me on LinkedIn Messenger, and 125 of them over 6 months booked appointments with me. Not everybody was a lead. Some of them might become sales ready down the road, but about 27 of them were sales ready at that time. And over the next 18 months, I closed about $438K worth of business, which is pretty decent for a 2-person firm. So that really gave me a lot of confidence that this methodology works. And I tried to kind of hold this close to my vest for a long time because you know how marketing is, it's like you talk about a technique working and then everybody piles on it and it stops working. So I didn't want to tell anybody what I was doing. But then as I watched what was happening on LinkedIn over that year and seeing how many bots were on LinkedIn and how many spammy connection requests and messages I was getting, I realized that if I don't teach what I'm doing, the bots are going to break LinkedIn. And if you follow me at all, you're going to hear me ranting about bots a lot. I do not like bots on LinkedIn. But so I decided to go ahead and start teaching this in 2019. And what I found was that it doesn't just work for me. So we built a course, a masterclass on how to do this at the beginning of 2021. And then in July, we started an accelerator program, and I had 10 members in the cohort where we were really working on this. And at the end of the 3 months, this 90-day accelerator that I was running, the cohort was getting a 65% connection acceptance rate and booking meetings with 53% of the people that they were reaching out to. They booked a total of 173 meetings with cold leads, which if you like math, that means that for every 100 connection requests they sent, they were getting 34 meetings. So the method I'm going to be talking to you about today is what they're using and what I'm using. And it's just, we're getting stronger at it. Even in the presence of a lot of LinkedIn spam, it's still working. So here's how we're getting so many meetings. Buyers, what I have learned and what I've known for a long time instinctively, but then research has proven this out. Rain Group did a study last year, and Rain Group, if you're not familiar with them, they're a really good strategic sales training company. And they do regular research on how buyers buy. And so they went out and looked at, I think it was 1,500 buyers that responded to their research. And they found that 82% of them said, yes, they will accept meetings and do want to hear from sellers, provided that the sellers bring value to the conversation. The problem is that more than 53% of the conversations that they're having with sellers don't bring value, which means that it's easy for you to stand out. These are the kinds of things they're looking for. They want insight. So if you can bring insight into emerging business trends that are affecting their industry and their business, that's going to be super helpful. If you can talk about best practices based on your area of expertise, they're interested in hearing that. And then if you can bring primary research data, research that you've done or research that you've sponsored that's super relevant to their business, they're going to want to hear about that too. There's a lot of different ways that you can leverage this, but just understand that if you can bring insight into the conversation, buyers will take meetings with you. So as you're thinking about what we're doing, I want you to remember the insight, because I'm going to talk about research and strategy, and it's going to tie in. Before we go there, do we have any questions, Phil?
No questions other than someone asking, can captions be enabled?
Oh, do we know how to do that? Let's see, Sarah, can you help us?
I can do that. Yep.
Okay.
Don't worry, I got it.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for asking that question. I think it's very important to make sure that we're accessible on this. So for anybody that did not get a chance to hear what I was speaking about because the captions weren't turned on, reach out to me on LinkedIn and I will give you a private update on this to just kind of bring you up to where we are and answer any questions. So it looks like closed captioning is on now. Okay, so as we dig in, focus is going to be super, super important. And I'm going to talk a lot about niching and bringing your target audience that you're going after on LinkedIn pretty narrow, because it's more effective. So when I was the first fintech company, financial technology services company that I co-founded, we didn't have that kind of focus. And I think it was 2001, like, I don't know, probably around May of 2001, I was working deals for this company. It was an application integration. We were looking at enterprise applications and going to make them talk together. And we were in the middle of deals with Nike apparel company, Gates Rubber, which if you're in Denver, you're probably familiar with Gates. They make rubber products for cars. And then Public Storage, and then a couple of financial services companies that were located on Wall Street. We're an 8-person firm. Like, we're not going to be able to solve really complex integration problems for that breadth of company, but we didn't know that then, and we were just trying to get anything. So we brought a friend of mine in. His name's Vic Ahmed. He's here in Denver, who had been super successful with a business and had sold a company not long before this happened. And he sat down with us to just give us some advice on how to grow the business and took a look at the pipeline. And he says, Candace, when you were a kid, did you ever try to set ants on fire with a magnifying glass? And I'm like, no, I never did that, right? So finally I was like, okay, maybe But he said, what did you have to do to get the fire started? Like you have to like bring that magnifying glass point of light down to the narrowest target you can possibly get to before it's going to create enough heat to start a fire. And he said the same is true with small business. I mean, we were an 8-person firm, so we really needed to focus. And he convinced us, and it was scary, I'm telling you, to walk away from most of those deals and just focus on one industry. My partner had a lot of experience in financial services. So we walked away from Nike and Gates Rubber and Public Storage and just focused on the 2 opportunities that we had in the financial services industry. Within a couple of months, I think it was, well, yeah, it was just before 9/11. We closed a deal with a firm that was located on Wall Street. And the reason the 9/11 date is important to that, obviously it's important period, but they were located not far from the towers. And so they shut down for a while. So it took a while for us to get started on that deal. But once we got that going, it just took off from there. And within 3 years from that, we were named on the Deloitte & Touche Fast 50 list for one of the fastest growing companies in Colorado. So that focus allowed and enabled explosive growth. So don't be afraid to focus. It's really worthwhile. So when you're thinking about your strategy, if you can focus in on a niche and then figure out some target accounts that you want to go after in that niche, and then look up the stakeholders that would be involved in your buying committee and think through what are the pains and benefits they're experiencing? What trends are affecting their business? What goals might they have that are consistent? And link it to what you're offering, what your product is, your service. More importantly, what capabilities does it bring to this target audience? And then what's the business value and the outcomes that the stakeholders can expect? You're going to use this information in your profile and also in your outreach strategy. So it's really helpful to define this first. Then you want to start getting into developing your headline and your the positioning. So you want to link it to that target audience that you're going after. Let's talk about why this is so important. So when people are deciding whether to accept your connection request and whether to meet with you, which is the goal of this whole program, is to try to get meetings with people on LinkedIn. They're going to first consider your headline. It's the first thing they look at before they decide to click connect or accept your connection request. And then they'll probably look at your about section or your summary on LinkedIn. They may look at your activity, but also your activity, the things you're posting, the things you're engaging with, may also be what brings you to their awareness so that they reach out to you and ask you to connect, and your job history. And that headline shows up in every one of those. So it's important to keep it relevant and tie it back to what it is that you have to offer this target audience. This is one way to structure your headline. It's not the only way, but what I recommend is that you don't use LinkedIn's default for your headline on LinkedIn. You can make it more customer-centric, take your title out of it, or put your title at the end. So this is one way to do it, and it's an easy way for you to get started, is to think about, I help this target stakeholder at company, type X, right, with what benefit I'm bringing them, and then the how I do it. So here's an example on my profile. I teach who is it, sellers of complex offerings, what is it, how to use LinkedIn, what's the outcome to connect and engage with their ideal prospects. Now, I do include a hashtag there. That hashtag has actually worked really well for me. And then my title. But I put that title in because it adds a little bit of credibility to my outreach. So if your title doesn't do that, then don't include it there. It's not necessary. Here's another example where he's talking about creating fulfillment and equanimity. So that's the outcome. For social impact professionals, that's the who. And then he's a coach. So he's talking about let's work together. So, and then this is another example where the outcome, driving revenue, and the what, B2B podcast. He's not being so specific about the who because it's not so critical for him. The B2B is probably the most critical for him. Okay, so once you've got your headline done, then you want to look at your profile summary. I noticed something coming up in chat. Is there anything we should answer before we go on, Phil?
Celeste was just mentioning that the headline, the headline characters is count is 220, updated in July 2020.
Okay, thanks, Celeste. I appreciate that. One thing that you want to be aware of, though, is that that full character count doesn't show everywhere. So, for example, in comments, I think you only get about 60 characters. So you can use the full length, but make sure that the most important part is up front so that where it gets cut off, you can still see it. Okay, thanks for that comment, Celeste. Anything else, Phil?
No, that's it.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's talk about your profile. So first of all, unless you're job hunting, your profile is not your resume. Your profile should be treated as a sales tool, not a job hunting tool, unless you're job hunting. So here's an example, one possible way for you to approach your summary. Again, this is not the only way, but if you're looking for a simple outline, go ahead and take a screen capture of this, because it's just a simple way for you to get started on how to structure that about section. What I do, who I do it for, how it helps, and outcomes my clients can expect, and how to contact me. Make it customer centric. I was just looking at somebody's new summary yesterday who had asked me to review it, and every single sentence started with I. For the same reason that you don't want to make your emails all about you, you also don't want to make your profile about you. Make it about what you can help a customer accomplish. Okay, so then here's an example. This is from somebody who works with financial providers. So he's got the what I do, and then this, finance professionals. And he's really focusing in on outcomes that the financial professionals are trying to get. And he's very focused on what's important to them. Then he talks about why it matters. And notice he's not talking about himself. He's talking about that target audience and the outcomes they're looking for. Then he goes into why it works. Again, he's not talking about himself. He's talking about the target audience. And then here, what others say, which is a nice little testimonial about his services. Here's another example. This person is a reseller for an ERP platform called Acumatica. And so he's like, why should you work with us? And a little bit about them, and then talking about what is in it for you as the client. Who am I as this person that you're connecting with? And what do we do to help you? And then here's another example of what not to do. So this is actually two different profiles, but there was a guy who was submitting to bid on an RFP that one of my friends had put out to, it was some sort of marketing platform that they were looking to replace. And the seller who had this headline in his profile was actually removed from being able to bid on the RFP specifically because he had this headline, and the company didn't want to be tenaciously hounded. So now if Blake's looking for a job, then this probably would work really well, because the headhunter and the sales manager might really want somebody that's like this. But as soon as he lands the job, he needs to change that headline. So this second part is actually from a different profile, but this profile was somebody selling supplemental insurance for businesses. And here he's focusing on this idea of scheduling 25 appointments per week in addition to cold calling, and then all of these accomplishments. If he reached out to me trying to sell business insurance to me, I would immediately know from his profile that I'm just a number, and that my business isn't important enough to him to count me more than a number. And then he's just going to try to push something down my throat, regardless of whether it's good for me. So this would actually cause me to not work with this person. So when you're thinking about this, there's 4 steps that I look at for supercharging your prospecting. And that profile is going to be such an important aspect of whether or not people want to engage with you. But remember, I talked about niching. So step 1, supercharging your prospecting by targeting a small group of people. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a vertical niche. So like our company used to only work with financial technology software companies. That was a vertical niche. Now we tend to work only with people who sell B2B complex products that really want to be human and don't believe in bots and can find their audience on LinkedIn. So that's a very horizontal audience. I still need to find just a handful of companies to target within that niche, but it's really useful to narrow down on the niche. So it might be companies that use a particular type of technology in-house or something like that, but find 40 to 50 firms and then do some research about those firms to figure out what they have in common and what trends that group of companies is likely to be experiencing, and specifically your target people that you're going to want to connect with. Then go find those target stakeholders on LinkedIn and research those individuals to figure out why they would want to connect with you, and then send them connection requests that are highly relevant to them, to their role, to information on their profile, to their company, and to those trends that you've identified. Then once they've connected with you, you look to engage with them and start a conversation. I go straight for a meeting because I want to try to get acquainted with them over Zoom, but I also will try to engage with them on LinkedIn as well, just in the messaging. Okay, any questions before we go on to the next part on how to do that?
We're getting some really positive feedback, and Katie wants to know, will the slides be available after this presentation?
I do not make these slides available, but there is another version of this training that's available on our website, and I'll get you the link to that. Actually, can you put the link in that in chat, Phil, so everybody knows where to find it?
Sure.
Just to the homepage, and you'll be able to find information about a course that we teach on this, and also get access to that free training if you just scroll down a little bit on that homepage. Okay, anything else, Phil?
That's it.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's talk about targeting leads. So one of the easiest ways to target leads, if you have selected that target audience initially, those 40 to 50 companies, is to just throw the company name up into Google and then add the word LinkedIn. Rather than going to LinkedIn to search for them, I get much better results when I'm trying to get to a company page if I just go to Google. It's more efficient. So I'll search for, let's say I'm chasing Acumatica as one of those companies, then I'll just go there. It brings up their company page as the first search result. So I click that and I'm going to come to their company page. Then I can click on the 270 employees and bring that up. And then I can go to the all filters section and filter down further. So in this example, I filtered down to people who have the word director in their title, and that brought me 28 results. Now, if I want, I can go on into Sales Navigator and additionally filter down, or I can work the list. With 28 results, I could probably just kind of filter through this, scroll through and figure out, okay, I'm not interested in talking to this person, but maybe the events marketing person I am. So then I just open their profile and look for a reason to connect with them. I will not click the connect button right here because that's not going to allow me to personalize the message. I want to go find a reason to connect with Bob before I send him a connection request. So now, before I jump, Phil, was there anything else that I should answer before we go into how to actually get them to respond?
No other questions.
Okay, cool. If you guys have questions, and I would expect in this next one, you're probably going to have more questions, but I will answer them now. You don't have to wait until the end because I'd rather we be contextual about your questions because it just makes it easier for everything to make sense. Okay, so the key to success in not just getting someone to accept a connection, but to actually take a meeting with you is hyper personalizing your outreach. I find that the more personalized my connection request, the higher the response rate on both accepting it, but more importantly, getting a meeting with them later. That one-to-one communication, just like if I was going to go to a live event and I'm going to reach out and shake your hand, I'm going to talk to you. I'm not going to talk boilerplate. I'm going to have a conversation with you. So do the same on LinkedIn. Treat them as an individual, and you will get significantly better results. And don't be spammy. It's like, I'm not going to walk up to you going, hi, I'm Candace. You want to buy my course? No, I'm going to say, hi, I'm Candace. What's your name? What do you do? What's important to you? And we're going to have a conversation. So same way on LinkedIn. What I have found is that connection acceptance rates go up a lot when you personalize. If you just click the connect button, or if you send something in person or use a bot, you're going to get maybe 10 to 20% connection acceptance ratios. If you're writing directly relevant connection requests that are super relevant to their interest in their company, your acceptance rate should be at least above 50%. The people that went through our summer accelerator are now getting about an 89%, I believe it is, connection acceptance rate. The important thing is no pitching. When you are reaching out to them, do not pitch. They're not interested in your commercial. No bots. If you're using bots, please stop. Please stop. And we can talk about that later, but it's not effective. It's just spammy. And don't outsource. It's the same problem that we have with bots, we have with outsourcing. So a friend of mine and a client actually was using a Fort Collins firm to do his LinkedIn outreach. And he was getting a lot of connections, but it was a very low connection acceptance rate, about 15%. They just sent a massive volume of connection requests. The problem is he had a pretty narrow target market. So as they had to go broader and broader to deliver on new connections, the connections became less and less relevant to him. They were booking meetings, but the meetings generally weren't with prospects. They were with people who wanted to sell something to him. And then he had a really embarrassing situation happen where he had this guy that has been a client for a long time. He's out playing golf with this client. This guy happened to be a second-degree connection on LinkedIn instead of a first degree. And Mike's outsourced firm was at that point doing the outreach for him. And while he's out golfing with the guy, the firm sends a connection request on his behalf saying, hey, I'd like to get acquainted with you. It's kind of embarrassing, but I don't see how you would avoid that if you're outsourcing. The other thing is that LinkedIn has recently really started cracking down on this behavior, both the outsourced behavior and the bots. They're both violations of LinkedIn's terms of service. And what I'm seeing is if you are on a free version of LinkedIn, you probably shouldn't be sending more than 5 connection requests a day. If you are on a premium version like Sales Navigator, then you can send up to 100 invitations per week. Otherwise, you're going to get a message like this that stops you. And if you get too many of these messages, it's been suggested that's 3, you could be permanently banned from LinkedIn. But you will be put into LinkedIn jail for a few weeks if you keep violating. So the other thing that's happening is profile views. If we view too many profiles in a short period of time, that's starting to cause a problem. So in this case, they're saying we noticed unusual activity that is an unusual number of profile views. So I used to take Sales Navigator, do a search for a particular target audience, and then open up like 15, 20, 30 profiles on different tabs, and then go work each profile one at a time to send connection requests. That has been flagged for LinkedIn as something that's similar to the way bots are operating and data scrapers. And so they're starting to prevent this. So here they're saying, we showed you a warning about this previously. This person got this. This was the second warning. So then they restricted his account for a full week, meaning he couldn't even get into LinkedIn anymore. And if he does it again, then they're going to permanently prevent him from even accessing LinkedIn. So some people have been able to overcome this, but you have to have a massive following to overcome it. So I would recommend at this point that you don't have more than 3, 4, 5 tabs open with profiles because this might happen to you. The other things are keep your invitation to acceptance ratios at least above 20%, because that is something that LinkedIn is taking into consideration. And a blog that I read recently said that you should be managing your pending requests. So go into your pending sent invitations and withdraw anything that's over 3 weeks in order to signal to the algorithm that you're paying attention. And then anytime you can get reciprocal engagement with your LinkedIn connections, that's also going to help. So that might be them commenting on your posts, or it might be them engaging with you in Messenger. Okay, before we go into this next section, I see lots of comments and chats coming up. Phil, you want to bring some of them up?
Sure. Ellen would like to know, is LinkedIn Premium necessary or recommended for this strategy?
That's a really good question. LinkedIn, the free version, has some pretty restrictive, what they call commercial search limitations. I don't know what that number is. They don't publish how many profiles you can view via search before you run into that. But once you run into it, they're not going to let you use the search features anymore for the remainder of that month. And it's not like a calendar month, so I'm not even sure when the month starts and stops. I ran into that a lot on the free version. Once you get Sales Navigator or Premium, you don't have those commercial search limitations anymore. So I do pay for Navigator for that reason. Now, if you're using Google to do all your searching, you can get around that problem by just searching for the person on Google, the way I showed you how I looked up Acumatica. Any others?
Allison would like to know, do I need to consider SEO in my profile?
That's a great question, Allison. I do highly recommend that you search optimize your profile with keywords that you want to be found on, because that is findable from Google. So if someone does a search for those keywords, it's possible that your profile will be in the first page of search results. My profile often outranks my website for keywords that we need to be found on. Next.
Shell, excuse me if I butchered the name, wants to know how many is unusual profiles?
How many is unusual?
Unusual profiles?
I don't understand the question.
Shell, could you elaborate on that, please?
Do we have anything else while we're waiting?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Shell, on that after you get a chance to elaborate on that question. Or did he just do it?
They got the answer.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so then let's talk about 4 different ways to engage on LinkedIn. I'm going to give you examples of those. So first of all, anytime you're sending an invitation, you want to go ahead and add that note to customize. If you're sending the invitation on mobile, don't click the connect button, because that's just going to send it. So click the 3 dots, and then you'll have an option to personalize the invite, and you want to choose that. So then you can add a note. So in this case, I was thanking someone who liked an article that I'd posted. So here's the conversation that happened from that. So I sent them that connection request. Hey, thanks for spreading the word. And then this person came back and commented about the article. And then I asked him if he'd be interested in getting acquainted. And he said, sure, here's my number. It's that easy. Like, it really isn't hard to get meetings on LinkedIn if you're having a conversation about something that's relevant to both parties. Here's another one. I do a lot of webinars. And in this case, a third party, Acumatica, in fact, had sponsored the webinar. So I did not have the registration list. So I was keeping a view on my profile views and sending out connection requests when it looked like somebody had viewed my profile who might have attended that event. So here I did that. This person, Sandra, looked at my profile the day after the event. So I sent her this connection request. Took her a while to respond, about a month, but then she confirmed, indeed she did. Now look here how I created that connection request. This is my invitation to connect. I said I'd enjoy getting acquainted. This has been a hack that I've learned in the last year that has dramatically improved my booked meeting rate. I've gone from 35% to 71% booked meeting ratio by setting that expectation in the connection request that I'd like to get acquainted with them. So she said, yes, I'd like to get acquainted. And we went ahead and booked that meeting. She became a client not long after that. So here's another one, another example where somebody had registered for a webinar. In this case, I had the registration list. And so I started reaching out to some of the key prospects on that list before the event. And you can see here again, I mentioned I'd like to get acquainted. I also mentioned that, oh, wow, you're in Fort Collins. And so then I invited him to actually get acquainted in person. He said he wasn't available then, but we did ultimately get together. So this is, I received a connection request from this person who happens to also be a connection of Mark, the previous person that I was just showing you. And so, you know, he agrees that we live in the best city in the US, Fort Collins, sorry, Denver. And so we engaged, and you can see, you know, it's just being human. Remember, I talked about this one-to-one, human-to-human conversation. And so then I mentioned that we're both connected to Mark and asked him if he wanted to get together. And so this guy, Jeffrey, and Mark and Phil and I just got together on Thursday last week at Odell's and had a great time. So this is a way for you to really engage with people on LinkedIn. Now, this is an example of what not to do. So this person sent me a connection request. It was a blank connection request. I accepted it reluctantly. I tend to accept these now because sometimes I can sell them my masterclass, so I'll accept. But if I didn't have this to sell, I probably would not have accepted that connection request. But then he sends me a message and he's just like kind of vague, you know, iron sharpens iron. Let's set up time to chat because he wants to explore possible synergies. So it's clear to me based on this that he hasn't looked at my profile. He doesn't know what those synergies might be. So he's going to take a shotgun approach to pitching me. So I gave him a shot at it. It's like, what do you want to discuss? And he doesn't bite. He still goes, you know, I want to see if there's any ways we might be able to collaborate. If he had just gone to my website and said, hey, I noticed that you're in the marketing industry. I am an expert in SEO. I'd like to see if maybe we could help your clients with SEO or something like that. I probably would have been more likely to take a meeting, even if he'd been that direct. But this vagueness, I'm not really keen on. Now I say that, but I'm also telling you, don't be salesy and don't pitch on this. So there's this fine line I've learned between being pitchy, being vague, and this sweet spot in the middle of being specific about a topic that I want to talk about that's of interest to them. And he didn't do either of those. He just kind of was pitchy and vague. So, okay. So lots of places to go look for a reason to connect where it's on their profile. It might be recent activity, recommendations that somebody's recently written for them, news on their website, the market research that you've done, or maybe they're engaged in a group and they've engaged in content there. Lots of places for you to go look for reasons to connect. And it doesn't take a lot. You just need some seed of an idea to start a conversation with. So any questions before we go on?
Just a clarification on the previous question about how many profiles can you view before LinkedIn will warn you or block you?
I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that one of the people that was banned recently was looking at a lot of profiles in order to curate a list of profiles to follow for her company. She happened to work for Dan Sanchez, lucky for her, because she was doing it on a free account. And Dan Sanchez and other people in his group have massive followings on LinkedIn. And so she had already been warned for sending too many connection requests. And then she viewed about 70 profiles in one day, and LinkedIn permanently banned her for that. So it was a buildup. It wasn't just viewing 70 profiles, but that was clearly too many in LinkedIn's opinion. I've heard of another person who got banned for viewing roughly 50 profiles and having a whole bunch of tabs open. So it does seem to be volume related, but I don't know where that threshold is. And I don't know how different it is for a paid account versus a free account.
Jen,
So,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Phil.
Jen would like to know if you can share whether or not any of this is applicable to company pages And can company pages be a sales tool?
Company pages can definitely be a sales tool, but you can't send connection requests or start conversations with company salespeople, sales pages. So this needs to come from the individual profile. That said, using the company page to establish the brand and share content is still valuable, because a lot of times people will go check out your company page before they decide to connect with you or take a meeting with you.
So from a thought leadership point of view, your company page can kind of help the sales process in that way, right?
Big time. Yeah.
Okay. No other questions.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Ted would like to know, during a LinkedIn connection request note, do you recommend moving to email? For example, saying you will be sending a helpful resource over email.
Please don't do that. A lot of the bots and the spammers on LinkedIn are scraping email addresses and then just automatically subscribing you to their email sequences so that they can spam you in 2 channels and not just one. And honestly, this drives me nuts. A LinkedIn connection is not a subscriber. They've just connected with you. Now, that said, once I'm engaging with them on Messenger, I do recommend trying to move the conversation to email for 2 reasons. One is it is really bloody hard to keep track of anything that's going on in LinkedIn Messenger. Stuff gets buried, you can't see it. I recently found a message that was like 2 years old that I'd forgotten to respond to. And so, I don't recommend keeping everything on LinkedIn all the time, but get their permission. Let them ask for it. So let them send you their email address and then communicate with them one-to-one until they let you know that they want to subscribe. So for example, if you connect with me on LinkedIn and we have a conversation, I'll ask you if you would be interested in receiving LinkedIn tips. You say yes, then I will send you the link to subscribe, or I'll subscribe you and send you a double opt-in message or something like that. But I don't treat you as a subscriber just because you accepted a connection request with me. That was a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. Thank you. Okay, I want to dive into how to prepare for a meaningful conversation now, because that's really important. The way I do it is I put together a plan for every one of these conversations, because I don't want to squander all the effort I did to get the meeting booked in the first place. So I always plan to do 70% listening and 30% talking, and I'm pretty careful about that. The way I plan for it is, it's like I look at the promised purpose of what the conversation was that we said we were going to talk about, and then I prepare some open-ended questions to ask them. Like, for example, if I'm sharing a trend, then it might be, what's your take on the trend? And then I might ask them, after they kind of talk about that a little bit, so how's that trend affecting your firm? And then I might ask them, well, what about you personally? What's your headaches related to that trend? So you can see that I'm doing some discovery work to see if there's a pain. I'm kind of probing it with those questions, but it's not so explicit about, well, what do you need and how can I sell to you, kind of thing. I plan a 30-second elevator pitch as part of my introducing. I ask them to introduce themselves first, and then I introduce myself. And my elevator pitch is specific to their business. It's a very brief 30-second reference story about how we've helped a firm similar to theirs. And then what I find is we'll talk about 20 minutes into a 30-minute conversation, and then they'll go, wow, Candace, I've done all the talking. Tell me more about your firm and what can I do to help you? And seriously, like verbatim, that happens a lot. And so then I'll give them a 1-minute reference story about how we helped a similar firm and ask them, do you have any needs similar to that? Or can you refer me to somebody? And then we figure out from there whether we should go to another phone call. But the better I plan these, the more likely it is that I'll be able to convert this into a prospect and figure out a next step with them. The other thing that I do with the conversations is turn that into content. So as I'm interviewing them about the trends, I take a lot of detailed notes. And then after I've had 5 or 6 or 7 conversations, I'm looking in those notes and I'm detecting my own trends. And so then I start creating content related to those trends. So for example, a couple of years ago, I started reaching out to resellers of ERP platforms, which is a back office platform for businesses. And I was able to, based on, I think I had about 25 phone conversations with these people. And I wrote a series of 5 articles. So each one of these cards represents an article. Acumatica actually published this on their blog, and I was able to get a lot of traction as a result of publishing this content. I was also posting on the outcomes of some of those conversations. I didn't quote the person or name the person I talked to. I just talked about some of the questions that they asked. I might post on that, and that created a lot of really valuable content for me. Quick best practices on sharing content. I know we've got a couple more questions, but I want to get through a couple of things here before we go there. Always try to be relevant and try to create conversations with people as you're sharing content, not just posting for posting's sake, and don't overdo it on the volume. Your goal for engagement on LinkedIn should be to stop the scroll. So LinkedIn is looking for a few things that are indicators that people are interested in this content. One is that see more. That's one of the most important indicators to the LinkedIn algorithm that people are interested in your content is if they click see more. And then dwell time, clicks, and comments are super important. Some research just came out. I just became aware of this today about some of the best performing posts. And as you probably already know, polls are doing really well. They get about 450% more reach compared to a regular text post with one picture. Document posts, you can upload PDFs or slide decks, and that gets really good reach because there's a lot of clicks happening. And then apparently multiple picture text posts do well. I have not seen this in my own experience, but some people get better results with that. Personally, I find posts without images do better than posts with images, but that's not true across the board. And then when you post with links, expect to get less traction. So this is a really good report, and I would be remiss to not mention it. So I just got to move the Zoom toolbar out of the way. But this LinkedIn algorithm, if you want the link to that, email or contact me on LinkedIn, and I'll send you the link to this guy's profile that just published this. It's really good research. It's quite helpful. It's a 44-page research document on the LinkedIn algorithm. So to get started, I'd recommend that you do a trial run. Pick a target audience and select an offering that you want to go after. Refine your profile and do the research on those accounts. Find 5 accounts and target them, and then start going after some of those stakeholders. Send those really personalized invitations and keep track of your results. I'd love to hear about it. So reach out to me, post and tag me on it if you want, or send me a connection request. I'd love to connect with you and hear how things are going. We have a masterclass that's available where the outcomes of the masterclass is it goes into a ton more depth on what I've presented here. So I just spent about 45 minutes speaking to you. That class is about 4 hours. So it's short modules. Everything's just about 20 minutes. So it's not so hard to go through. And the outcomes from that is that you will be able to figure out what your niche is and get that strategy for niching down. I'll help you find the ideal prospects and show you how to establish real relationships with those people, not just cursory connections, and start getting a steady stream of calls. So I also go through like a ton of different messages that worked and messages that didn't, and we analyze why and why not. So if you're interested in that, it gives you a lot of information also on how to nurture those people that are not yet sales ready. So you can find information on that at learning.propelgrowth.com. And also I'm offering just for Denver Startup Week, a coupon. So if you use the coupon code DSW, it'll knock 15% off until October 15th. So it's a $74.55 savings. So it's not an insignificant number. So Phil, I think we've got some more questions.
One more question. Ellen would like to know, if you were using this technique to target potential investors instead of customers, is there anything you might do differently?
No, I think that targeting investors is a fantastic way to use this. Be aware that I get, because I'm a CEO of a company and have had multiple startups, I think people assume that I'm wealthy. And so I get approached a lot for like pre-IPO investments and different things. So you really need to differentiate from these people by being super personal. And just like you might, if you were doing outreach via email, trying to contact these investors, be really, really one-to-one, personalized, and make it relevant to them. Don't pitch until you get the connection accepted. And then I would probably experiment with whether you should try to pitch a little bit about your company in order to get the meeting. Sometimes that might be a little different with investors.
And Ryan is asking about boosting posts. What about boosting posts?
So you can't boost posts on your personal page. You can boost them on your company page, and that can work. And so I would encourage you to experiment with it, but really have your niche and your target audience figured out so that you're boosting posts that are super relevant. Be careful not to confuse viral with effective, because a lot of times you can get something that gets like tons and tons of engagement and tons of reactions, but is it actually doing anything for your business? So look for the kind of engagement that are the people that you're targeting, not just random. A friend of mine just posted a funny post today where he was just, took a post of bedhead, like this kind of irrelevant quote from Marcus Aurelius. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. And he was laughing because he's like, yeah, I got 1,000 views on this silly post that was completely meaningless and irrelevant to my business. It's fun, but don't confuse vanity metrics with KPIs that move your business forward. Any others?
Yes. Someone wants to know, someone says, our clients are commonly investors. Who should I approach bringing up the company, given that I would like the investor to be a client as well?
Oh, so you're selling to the investors rather than pitching your business to be invested in.
So it's a how should I approach?
I would
how to
take
approach.
The same approach that I'm talking about. Talk about trends related to the offering that you have. Treat those people just like you would treat any other kind of connection that you would be going after on LinkedIn.
Okay, looks like we're at 4 o'clock.
All right, you guys have been an awesome group. Thanks so much for all the engagement and the questions. It makes it so much more fun to do this. So if you go to our site, learning.propelgrowth.com, you'll find some free training. You'll find access to the masterclass. And if you want to sign up for the masterclass, use that coupon code DSW in order to get 15% off of the masterclass between now and October 15th. And then please send me a connection request too. There's my LinkedIn profile of Candace Edelin. I'd love to connect with you. So please do connect with me. Have a great night, you guys. I am just going to download this chat. So great engagement. Really enjoyed it. Thanks everybody for being here. Okay, Sarah, are you the one that will close this down? I guess I'll go ahead and click leave then. And thank you so much for hosting this, Sarah, and Denver Startup Week. This has been an honor to present.